I know enough to get me into trouble.
Don't you want to know what this is all about?
You're damn right I do.
Hey, what's whip cracking, everybody? Welcome back to Computer Games Hardware. Today on the channel, we are reviewing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. You might have noticed that I haven't done many game reviews over the course of 2024, and that's because I'm taking a slightly more relaxed approach to game reviews. I'm not going to be waiting for game codes and dealing with review embargoes and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to play the games that I want to play and review it if I've got something cool to say or interesting to add. So that's why you haven't seen many games this year. I think the only one we've done is Hellblade 2, but I got some stuff to say about this one, so let's get stuck into it. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is the newest action-adventure game by MachineGames, who you might know from the Wolfenstein series of games, and published by Bethesda. This is a globe-trotting adventure where you solve puzzles, uncover mysteries, and punch Nazis and fascists in the face using your classic bullwhip, along with a beautiful score from John Williams that is used really understatedly in this game. It is the perfect introduction to Indiana Jones in the modern gaming era. And I have to say, one of the best things about this game is its storytelling and its acting performances. So the performances are so good in this game that it really feels like an Indiana Jones canon story.
We made it, Henri!
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
How many years has it been? 19?
Since the infirmary by the Piave.
Those were dark times. Unbearable without a good friend at my side. Follow me.
I even prefer this to the recent movie that was released. I think this is the best way to tackle these legacy franchises that people know and love, like Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters, all these types of movies from the 80s all have a special place in people's hearts, but this is just one of the most fantastic ways to play this game and engage in this character in this franchise. I think this is much better than a live action Legacy sequel. This is performed beautifully. Troy Baker as Indiana Jones is perfect. He's not doing a imitation of Harrison Ford. He's really doing it understated, and the story is so well done that it feels like it fits into the pantheon of Indiana Jones tales. So let's give you a brief overview of the story. The story kicks off actually from the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you get that opening scene to introduce you to Indy and all the characters, and it serves as sort of the tutorial of the game. Then it sort of segues into the main story, which sees Indy tracking down an artifact that is stolen from the university museum, and he goes on this globe-trotting adventure that sees him in the Vatican, the Himalayas, and all these beautiful locations. And that sets off another one of the strengths of this game, which is the environments. The environments are top tier in this game. The game is undoubtedly beautiful. You can see the glimmer on the cobblestones in the Vatican, the recreation of the beautiful works by Michelangelo in St. Peter's Basilica, and all those sorts of things. It really shines in this game. When you're in the Vatican and when you're in Egypt feel really different. When you're in the Vatican, you're climbing up scaffolds and trying to dodge captains that might see through your disguise and get to certain places to meet different people. When you're in Egypt, you're on like a sort of like a archaeological quest. You're doing all this exploration and puzzle solving and things like that. So all the different locations sort of have their own life to them. And as I mentioned before, because they're in the world, you really do feel like you're in the 30s going to these different places, and they are done to an epic scale. So the Vatican looks as beautiful as it does in real life. Egypt looks like it's like dusty and mysterious and fantastic. It really gives you a sense of scale and location, and it really helps because it's such a cinematic story. You even have the option to play this in a cinematic view that really looks gorgeous if you want to play it in that sort of story mode, but a little more on that later on. First puzzles that you have to figure out is associating different artifacts by placing them next to the country of origin that they're from. So you've got to look at the flag and associate it with the little details that are on the artifact. And this is a really great way to do this game because the difficulty of the puzzles, which you can increase and decrease, by the way, at their moderate setting, they are set just perfectly. They're not too difficult, they feel challenging, and you are able to figure them out without feeling like you need to jump off into a guide or figure something out. There is also plenty to do in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. You have your main story missions and objectives that you have to complete, but you also have a whole bunch of side quests and puzzles and collectibles to collect and achieve. And what's really great about them is they all feel like they belong in the world. And it's really good because it's our world. We are in locations like Italy, in the Himalayas, in Egypt, and all these kinds of places. So all the items feel like that they exist in our world, which is really great. You also get upgrades and buffs and things like that to your strength and your stamina and things like that. And the way they do that is really clever as well. It comes with like books, so Indy's obtaining that knowledge and helping him on his adventure. So that is a really way. Everything feels like it exists in the world, and all the quests and side quests feel like worth doing, which is really impressive. Sometimes I just like to, beeline the story, but this game makes you feel like everything is worth doing, which is a real positive.
Gotcha. Love that smell. Conspiring with the Holy See, the giants thus constructed a secret chamber underneath the Vatican to contain and keep the most holy of objects from the eyes of the world.
The game design is really excellent too. There's not just one way to get things done in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. You get rewarded by being able to go off the beaten path, find different items and objectives, speaking to different NPCs, which are all acted perfectly too. It's not just Troy Baker that does an excellent job. It's the whole cast and crew of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle that really shines in this story. Hey, just want to jump in here and say, if you're enjoying any of the content on Computer Games Hardware, please chuck us a like, share, and subscribe. And watching the videos really helps me out, guys. Thank you for everyone who supported the channel over 2024. All the OGs and all our new subscribers. Appreciate you guys all. We have some affiliate links down in the description below, and we're working on some cool stuff here on Computer Games Hardware, some t-shirts and mugs and all that stuff. So you'll be able to support us in a whole bunch of different ways. But also, you guys can check us out on social media as well. Again, I'm terrible with the social media, but all the links are in the description below. You can get us on Instagram, you can get us on TikTok, on Threads. We're even on Blue Sky as well. So they're all variations of Dan CGHW. All the links are in the description below, so check us out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Now, the combat and the gunplay in this game are not the best in my opinion, and thankfully they're not exactly the focus. Figuring out your quests and doing all the puzzles is where Indiana Jones and the Great Circle shines. There's also a pretty big emphasis on stealth in the Great Circle, so you're encouraged to do things to avoid lots of conflict, and sometimes actually if you go a different route, it sort of does a GTA, sets off an alert, and you've got every fascist and Nazi coming after you in under the sun, and you've got to fight them all off and trying to escape. So that can happen to you. So it does encourage a little bit of exploration and stealth, which some people might be a little bit put off, but I thought it was quite fine. You have a stamina gauge in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and that can be a little bit hampering at sometimes. The combat is kind of like your left and right triggers are your right and left hand, and you've got block and you can use your whip. And I must say, using the whip really feels excellent. It's one of those things that it's got the perfect sound, the whoosh, and every time you use it, it feels like it's worth it. You also traverse with it, and sometimes using the whip or climbing and scaling up different paths and objects puts you into third person mode, which looks okay, but they could have done a little bit of work with that. It also, the stamina gauge is also a bit hindrance. It's not like Tomb Raider or Uncharted in that respect. Indie doing traversal comes at a big stamina cost, so it's not as free-forming as like a Tomb Raider or Uncharted. So and you have to replenish your stamina and your energy. You've got band-aids, you've also got different types of food and different types of fruits that you have to eat to maintain your energy. So it's a delicate balancing act, and you really have to consider, am I going to get through this section if I go down the action path, or am I going to have to take the stealth route? The gunplay is a little bit interesting in this game as well. The mechanics feel fine, but I have a little bit of a problem with the animations of the gunplay. They don't feel as iconic as they should be. You wave around Indy's iconic pistol, and to me, it just doesn't feel like it's animated as good as it should be. Same to be said from the third person perspective. And, you know, with my hardware and my GPU, Indy looks a little bit Max Payne-y with his leather jacket and the way he scales and traverses things. So I think they undercooked that just a tiny little bit. So the hand-to-hand combat, the gunplay and the traversal can be a little bit clunky and sketchy at times. Now, I also should mention, while I really like the different paths that you can take to complete your objectives and skills, it does come with a little bit of a downside. I felt myself looping a few too many times in different locations in big cities like the Vatican and things like that, because they're sort of like open world hubs, and you can do different types of things, and there's many different ways to do them, but I felt like sometimes I was doing things over and over again, or I was getting to something that I thought I should be able to do, but I hadn't progressed in the story far enough to be able to do it. So I kept trying to do it over and over again with no success, thinking, what the hell is going on here? And it's just that I hadn't progressed through the story. So that's a bit unfortunate. I wish they'd opened it up enough so you're able to do whatever you want and have it feel a little bit more natural, so it doesn't break that game cycle and that immersion. One of the big things I want to talk about is what I feel like is a real missed opportunity, and that was the opportunity to have first and third person. I would have loved to be able to choose between first and third person. This game is published by Bethesda, and they are the experts at first and third person. Look at games as recently as Starfield that had a really good first and first person switching mode. They should have been able to support MachineGames into implementing this type of gameplay, because I think that it would have been an excellent experience if they had considered a third person mode. Maybe it's something that they should still consider because of all the classic outfits and looks Indy has, particularly with all the game mechanics. One of the big mechanics in the games is putting on disguises and things like that. So that would have really been cool to see, freely in third person mode. If you're worried about it, I can guarantee you that modders are working on this as we speak. So I think we're going to see that whether MachineGames like it or not. So I would encourage them to consider that in a future update, because I feel like it's a real missed opportunity. I want to talk about the graphics, and then I want to talk about some of the graphics options. So let's start with the real positive stuff. And let me tell you that this game is absolutely stunning. And despite what you might have heard, and we'll talk about that in a minute, you can make this game look pretty amazing to a certain degree, depending on what type of GPU you have. Again, more on that later, but you can still make this game look absolutely gorgeous. And the environments just look beautiful and rich. The characters, the NPCs, and everyone you interact with feel like they're a part of the world. The environmental design is absolutely perfect in this game, and you can tell MachineGames went to a lot of detail to getting this stuff right, particularly because we're in the real world in the 30s here, and their hard work has paid off. The character models look really good as well. Indiana Jones, he looks like Indy, sounds like Indy. Troy Baker's performance is absolutely superb. There is a little bit of the uncanny valley in my opinion, and I think that comes from it being compared to the movies, this being so fresh in my mind. I've seen them a million times, and then particularly in the opening scenes where they recreate the iconic opening scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, you see the difference between the game engine and the movie, obviously. So at certain points, like particularly when characters open their mouths or are doing stuff like that, you see a little bit of the uncanny valley, but the character models do look pretty great. I don't love how they look in third person sometimes when Indy scaling things. Like I mentioned, that it can look a bit boxy like Max Payne. I wish they did a little bit of work. Also, that's one of those things that you just have to deal with, that game engines are probably just not there in general yet to solve that problem. But you can tell when it switches into that perspective, you sort of go, I wish it looked a little bit better than that. I do have some issues with this game, and namely it comes from some of the graphical options. Some of you might know there's a little bit of controversy with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, being that it requires mandatory ray tracing. So if you don't have a ray tracing card, you are not going to get the best experience out of this game. You have all the general ray tracing turned on by default. It also features path tracing, so if you have higher end cards, you can enable the full suite of ray tracing, global illumination, all those sorts of things. It also means that standard rasterization lighting features are not in the options where you think they might be. Some of those features are missing, and it's a little bit difficult to tailor the experience for the type of GPU that you have. This is an NVIDIA sponsored title, so DLSS 3.5 is integrated into Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, so those with NVIDIA cards can take full advantage of frame generation and DLSS to get the best experience out of their GPUs. However, there is one glaring issue about this game, and it's actually part of the reason why I wanted to do a review of this game, and that is that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle lacks support for FSR and Intel's XeSS, which is absolutely unacceptable from my view. This game has launched on Game Pass, on Steam, and all other platforms. It's a $100 game, particularly here in Australia, and it lacks support for a lot of people's GPUs. Being an NVIDIA sponsored game, they have not supported FSR and Intel right out of the box. And it really does feel like you are being punished for not being an NVIDIA customer. It sort of feels like they're saying, well, sorry plebs, if you haven't got an NVIDIA card, you're just not going to get the best experience with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And that's really, really disappointing, particularly when people own cards that have support for ray tracing, for frame generation, and for upscaling, and they can't use it because they have the audacity not to be an NVIDIA customer. It's unacceptable. Now, I should say that MachineGames have said they are implementing FSR as we speak, and it will come with a future update. So unfortunately for me, for anyone that doesn't own an NVIDIA card, I would be saying to them, you might want to wait until they implement the other upscalers. They haven't even got a good native upscaler for you to use in the meantime. It is really disappointing. So unfortunately for me, the only option was for me is to bump down the resolution to 1440p instead of taking advantage of an upscaler and frame generation like my hardware supports. That is just really embarrassing for one of the biggest AAA games that's been released on Game Pass and all other platforms. It just boggles the mind that they would still do that in 2024. And before you get upset, I know AMD have done this before as well. So let me know in the comments down below what other games have done this previously. I think it's unacceptable for such a big title to be doing this type of thing and punishing people for, having the audacity to not have an NVIDIA card. It's playing a really disappointing game. So shame on you, MachineGames. You should have implemented all the upscaling methods for all gamers. Having said all that, all the traditional graphics options are there. You've got your dynamic resolutions, HDR, and all those sort of things. But, running through the options, it really did take the smile off my face when I realized I didn't have support for FSR or frame generation. Couldn't turn it on in the graphics settings, doesn't allow me to turn it on driver based. Really disappointing to see. Now, you can turn on fluid motion frames globally in your Radeon settings, but I don't want to do that. I want to do it on a per game basis. So, it really limits your options when you're doing that. So that is something to really consider. And before you do, let me tell you that the modding community has already got a patch out for it, so you can explore that. Otherwise, wait for MachineGames to implement this in game, because you're not going to get the best experience, and you're going to have to bump down your resolution to either 1440p or 1080p, unfortunately for, gamers who haven't got NVIDIA's hardware. You can use variable refresh rate and all those other options to get the most out of the game, but the best bet for you is to bump down the resolution and just enjoy the game, which, look, personally, I don't mind doing this much, but it really frustrates me that I've got the hardware in my machine to be able to make this thing look as best as it can be, and I've been restricted because I was stupid enough not to have an NVIDIA card. Now that I've got that out of the way, overall, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a great immersive cinematic experience. Punching Nazis in the face has never felt so good. Cracking that whip is a fun time. Tripping over fascists and, scaling different parts of the environment really feels well. I wish the gunplay and the combat weren't so sketchy, but thankfully that's not the main point of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. The performances are next level. Troy Baker should be celebrated for his performance as Indy. It's really nuanced and just understated. The game environments look beautiful, and the story really feels like a canon Indy story. So you are set to have a good time with this game. Despite all the glaring issues that we've discussed for us plebs who dare not have NVIDIA card and have to rely on, FSR or XeSS, might want to hold off until that is supported. And I would encourage MachineGames to really get the whip crapping on that so more people can experience their game in the best possible experience they want. Anyway, what do you guys think? Have you enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Great Circle? Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think about FSR and XeSS not being supported on launch? Are you disappointed about that? I definitely am. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I've had a whip-cracking time making this one. I hope you've had a good time watching it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Do you guys want to see more game reviews on computer games hardware? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.